What's noteworthy about Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods? I really like that this is technically a nice example of what you should do when you're making a sequel to basically almost any movie. Of course, you get a natural growth and evolution of your main character from the first movie, diving into a story arc that allows the character to become something much more, I guess you could say. And it also allows you to explore the world that you established in the first movie. Of course, in this movie, of course, they showcase more of the mythology of Shazam, which is pretty cool. And I also really like that since they have a bigger budget now, they really put it to good use. I really love the sets and decor that they use in the movie. The presentation looks a lot more nicer than before. It looks a lot more grander, I guess you can say. And of course, I really like the brand new suits that the gang are wearing. And yeah, it's a pretty decent sequel to the first Shazam movie, but there's one thing that I found a bit jarring. Don't worry, it isn't spoilers here, but I found it a bit jarring, even though they did technically set it up throughout the narrative how this movie concludes. It's still a bit whiplashy, I guess. When I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, this is how we're gonna be settling things. Yeah, I'm still a bit befuddled by it, kinda, but oh well. Either way, this is a pretty nice superhero movie, a very fun superhero movie as well, that doesn't do anything too crazy. And that's something that we should have from time to time when it comes to these cinematic universes involving superheroes. So what do you think? What's noteworthy about Black Adam? It's basically in a way, a popcorn movie, which is usually a term referred to with movies that are just simply there to entertain you, not really give you a story that is too intriguing, I guess you could say. And this movie really showcases that really nicely, surprisingly enough. You can clearly tell they want to show the power of Black Adam, and to do that, of course, you gotta have a lot of action sequences. And yeah, they were able to find a way to do as much of those big action sequences as much as they can. And in a way, it actually did kind of work because they did not forget the story. They still remember they have to have some sort of a narrative to connect all of these together. And even though it's not the most, I guess, one of the most gripping stories, I guess, it's still a story that still makes sense and isn't too convoluted to make all these action sequences work, which is very commendable. So if you have some kind of, I don't know, hangout with your friends and you want to watch some sort of movies that is just simply nice and entertaining, I think this is a pretty decent pick. But what do you think? What's noteworthy about John Wick Chapter 4? Of course, as always, the action sequences are pretty stellar as usual, but they're a lot more relaxed compared to the previous outing, which makes sense since Chapter 3 did a lot of crazy stuff with the action sequences. But of course, John Wick is not alone. There's a lot of other characters who have their own specific moveset, and the fight scenes are executed pretty well for those characters as well. And throughout the movie, I kind of had this like chill yet exciting feeling thanks to the action sequences being more relaxed this time around, and I actually like this feeling. I also really appreciate, even though if there isn't any fight sequences going on, the movie looks amazing. The shots look absolutely incredible. You can literally take a frame from this movie and just put it as like your wallpaper for your desktop or something. And another thing that's really great that I really like to see was the ending of this movie. Don't worry, I won't spoil anything, but I really appreciate that the movie concludes the stories of the characters involved pretty nicely. But no matter what I say about this movie, you can't deny that the greatest John Wick of all time is Polosaurus Rex. If you know, you know. But what do you think? But what do you think?
Are they shooting each other? Civil War!
Hey paisanos, it's the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. Do 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 do. We're the Mario Brothers and plumbing's our game. We're not like the others that get all the fame. We're not like the others that get all the fame. We're not like the others that get all the fame. We're not like the others that get all the fame. Yeah, we're not like the others that get all the fame. We're not like the others that get all the fame. Yeah, we're not like the others that get all the fame. What's noteworthy about The Super Mario Brothers movie. Essentially, it's a celebration of Mario's past and present, combining different elements from the games together pretty seamlessly, which includes the music, which is fantastic. I also appreciate the fact that even though a lot of animated movies nowadays go for a very stylistic approach when it comes to animation, I'm glad to see that this movie, with its semi-realistic style that we see in previous entries from a long time ago, is still looking great on the big screen to this day, thanks to, well, this picture. I also found it neat that the characters we've seen throughout the years are acting more like characters this time around compared to the Nintendo titles and interacting a lot more, since of course they usually focus more on the gameplay rather than the story. I also found it a bit unfortunate though that even though we have a great story here with the dynamic between Mario and Luigi, I feel like it could have been fleshed out if they had more time to breathe within each scene. Another problem that's included with this is that since we're jumping from situation to situation pretty quickly, it kind of gets confusing for a general audience to know why Mario do this, why Peach do that, and why Bowser do this. A Mario fan, it's understandable since that's how it is in the games, but I feel like some people might need more context, which is understandable, and I kind of feel this is probably the reason why the audience and the critics have a different view on this movie. But yeah, even with that in mind, if you're waiting for a great Mario movie since 1993, this is definitely the movie. With the importance of Mario throughout the years and his importance in video games in general, I'm glad he has having this kind of respect with his brand new movie. So what do you think? What's noteworthy about James Gunn's superhero endeavors? Of course, he first worked on Volume 1 and Volume 2 of The Guardians of the Galaxy, which he directed and written. And of course, these movies were technically what skyrocketed the popularity of these Guardians, because before this, they were technically considered obscure Marvel characters in a way not many people really know about it besides hardcore comic fans, which is surprising also what James Gunn is. And yeah, afterwards, this technically kickstarted Marvel's trend of taking their more lesser known properties and making big blockbuster hits out of them. And even outside of Marvel, James Gunn technically took this approach over there at DC with the second Suicide Squad film, as well as the Peacemaker series, showcasing a lot of obscure DC characters and making some very compelling stories with them. And it's no wonder why, with all this experience, is that now he is the co-head of DC Studios, a brand new branch of Warner Brothers, which is going to be handling all the DC projects from now on to make a nice, consistent universe. And of course, this era is going to be kickstarted with a brand new Superman film directed and written by James Gunn himself. It's pretty surreal seeing his journey throughout the years, and I'm intrigued to see where it takes him next. But before all of that, one last ride with the Guardians of the Galaxy with Volume 3. But what do you think of him and his superhero endeavors? What's noteworthy about the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? That is, well, not really focused that much on the Guardians. Yeah, sure, there are some nice character moments, but the one that they're really trying to focus on, which they surprisingly did very subtly, I don't think you'll really catch this going into it, is that it's more focused on Yondu, which is pretty surprising. Even the logo is a big hint to that. And I kind of feel like this is pretty interesting because in the previous entry, they don't really focus much on him. He's an interesting character, but they didn't do much with him. So they kick it up a notch with his character in this one. And that seems to be a running trend with this movie. Like in the previous entry, lighting is very dark, but here they cranked it up to 11 with the brightness and the colors, and it looks honestly pretty pleasing to the eyes. And of course, that's also the case with the comedy, which is also cranked up to 11. I still remember a lot of people laughing at a lot of the jokes over there in the cinema back in 2017. It was a nice time. And yeah, I think probably when the first movie came out, Volume 1, I feel like they were a bit worried to take some risks, so they tried our best to play it safe. That's why probably there was the Infinity Stones being involved in the plot as well as Thanos, but here, there's none of that. They fully embrace that this is what the Guardians is, and I appreciate that. So, yeah. But what do you think of this movie? What's noteworthy about lightsaber battles? Even though we had a pretty cool run of lightsaber battles within the TV series recently, in terms of the movies, there hasn't been a lightsaber battle that made me go, whoa, that looks pretty cool, you know what I'm saying? I feel like with the brand new project over there with Lucasfilm involving Rey from the sequel trilogy, despite what you may think of her and how powerful she is, at the very least they need to take advantage of that within the lightsaber battles of the next film. have her do some crazy stunts, some crazy acrobatics even with the lightsaber in hand. And maybe she can do like the Palpatine twirl but crank it up to 11. I know there's a lot of potential that hasn't been tapped yet when it comes to lightsaber battles within the modern day. And hopefully in the far off future, whenever this movie comes out, because it's still a mile away, hopefully they will deliver on something like that. At least to some extent. But anyways, what do you think of lightsaber battles and what they should do next with them? And of course, I hope you guys had a happy May the 4th, even though I'm a bit late to the party.
Do not drink pina coladas, or else you float in the air. You should have drank some Ribena, or orange juice instead.
What's noteworthy about the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special is that even if you don't celebrate that particular festive season, there's still a pretty compelling story here for you to watch. I really like that this technically take a small little factoid that was somewhat obvious in Volume 2 and make that the main premise of the story and did it pretty well. Having a fun little journey involving Mantis and Drax, which are technically the main characters here, and I love their interactions in the previous entry that they were in. So it's fun to see them just messing around on Earth, more specifically Hollywood. So yeah, and I also really found it fun how they were able to, mix in Kevin Bacon with the narrative of this story. I mean, it does kind of make sense considering Star-Lord's background and everything, but hey, it's still pretty nice how they were able to mesh these two together in a way. But yeah, it's a nice holdover for people before the inevitable Volume 3, which is now out in theaters, I presume, by the time I upload this. So yeah, don't skip out on this one. This is a nice fun journey into Volume 3, so go check it out. But if you have watched it, what do you think? What's noteworthy about the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? So essentially, this movie is primarily focused on Rocket's story, which has been teased throughout the trilogy and beyond, and it's well worth the wait. It's a very emotional and impactful story involving Rocket's origins and how he came to be and how he is now. I also really like that the other Guardians have a time to shine in this, with their character growths nicely woven into the main plot without distracting it completely. And that's also the case when it comes to the comedy, because it's treated very casually, and even though it's very funny, it's less like a ha 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 lol 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 shout out loud kind of thing, and more like a haha that's a pretty good one kind of thing. Which I'm glad, because with a story like this that it's a pretty big deal, they have to treat the comedy like that so it won't feel too distracting. So yes, this is essentially a very suitable and well-deserved end to this era of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I hope you guys already watched it, and if you did, what do you think? What's noteworthy about Fast X? Fast 10, past tense. Can't wait for the sequel movie, present tense. But speaking of, this is essentially the first part of a trilogy of movies that's gonna round off this era of the Fast and the Furious franchise. I kind of feel like we're getting a lot of those recently for a lot of movie franchises, but how does this one fare? Well, essentially, considering this is the first part, it is a way to set up the future events in the next few movies. And they did a pretty good job of doing that, asking a lot of questions about, the Fast family's philosophy and such. Making me very intrigued to see how they're gonna tackle this in the next few movies and expand upon this question. I also really like the villain Dante. His characteristics and his backstory make for a very intriguing villain to have for these next few projects. And I also really like the fun little references and Easter eggs to the previous movies, similar to what a Marvel movie does at times. And it makes sense for this what they're doing with the approach for these next few films. But one thing I do feel like this movie does that I kind of feel like could have been done better is the separation of the Fast family and how they separated into different groups. I kind of feel like at least could have been just 2 instead of 4, because I kind of feel like it's a bit too much and they didn't really manage that correctly. But moving aside all of that, of course, one thing that a lot of people expect from these movies is a very fun, entertaining ride with a lot of exhilarating action sequence and just a fun, exhilarating ride throughout. And this movie still delivers on that. And yeah, I'm glad it did. So I'm intrigued to see what happens in the future, but for now, this is pretty fun. But what do you think? What's noteworthy about Disney live-action remakes? I prefer the ones like Aladdin and even the Beauty and the Beast one, mostly because they replicate the more colorful and bombastic style of the animated films that they are based on. And yeah, there is still a place for the more serious and more grounded like versions of these remakes, but it only works with the right source material and if done right. But again, even with that in mind, I still prefer the colorful approach. And yes, I know that it's not really a fair reason as to why we should keep these remakes around, but that's why I like watching them. But still, I would love to see more stuff done with these remakes, like add more interesting stories within these beloved characters. If you're gonna bring these guys back into the spotlight, maybe do something more unique while keeping the colorful aesthetic of the animated film. But oh well, while we wait, let's just see them greenlight I don't know, an Emperor's New Groove remake starring Ryan Reynolds. Um, I know I'm kind of joking here, but despite the fact that well, even though that is ridiculous, we did have Will Smith as a genie, so I don't know. But anyways, what do you think of Disney live action remakes?